Big one. Oh. That's gotta be a striper, right? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everyone is doing well. And yeah, as you guys can probably guess, we are about to go fishing. California Delta today. It is 7:30, so a little bit later start than I typically would go. I don't know, there's some method to the madness today, or maybe method to the stupidity. It could go either way. Pulling up my phone right now. Here's the tide chart for today, specifically where we're going to fish. Like I said, right now it's about 7:30. That location is just starting to outgo as far as the tide goes. Really what I'm curious to see and experiment with today, this time of year, it's obviously cooler, fall is upon us, it's hoodie weather, but take a look at this part right here. This is gonna be a super duper low tide, right at 0 foot. I guess unless you fish tidal fisheries, this wouldn't make a whole ton of sense, but if you do, you guys know what I'm talking about. It seems like fish relate to certain tides better. Of course, it depends on the time of year, weather, all those things. But I feel like in general, this is a very general statement, that in the cooler months, fall, winter, early spring, fish tend to bite or are more active, set up right with an incoming tide. So the tide coming in, water rising. And in the spring, the summer, the hot months, they react better to an outgoing tide. Right now, it's kind of like that weird time, that fall transition, cold in the morning, shorter days, but still gonna get kind of toasty in the afternoon. And the main point of getting up a little bit later, making my way there kind of leisurely, is to really get there and fish that last bit of outgoing. Then we got the low tide for an hour or so, and then see what the incoming tide's like. I'm really curious to see if there's going to be a difference between that last bit of outgoing, if the bite's good then, if they're relating to maybe more of a summer deal, or if it's tough and then they start biting with that incoming tide, and it's more of that cold weather, fall, winter tide these fish are relating to. I don't know, just an observation that I made note of over the past couple of years, and figured today would be a perfect time to test it. And of course, I'll take you guys with me. This method to the madness could pay off, could look like a genius, or it could be an In-N-Out burger day, if you know what I'm saying. Anyways, no time to waste. Let's make the drive there, get the kayak on the water. We'll see what happens. Oh, there we go. A little cranky action. I think he's getting bigger. Oh, it's a good one. Got a face full of hooks. Alrighty. Good way to land this fish. I gotta give him the old baby scoop. Oh yeah, there we go. Well, that was kind of cool. Pattern, I don't know, but it's a bite. Skunk off the boat. That's always key on the Delta. Nice little chunk. Cranky. Mean anything? I don't know, but we gotta keep going with it. Old square bull. literally been one of the most productive baits, like consistently productive baits on the Delta this year for me. Just a weird year. I've said it before, but the squarebill bite, the crankbait bite, typically, like all years prior to this, is good in like the winter, early spring. Kind of picks up in the fall again, but I feel like it's been consistent all year. I mean, in years past, in the summer, I wouldn't even bring any crankbaits with me out to the Delta. That said, it definitely feels more like a fall day. 67-degree water temp. It's cold, it's windy. But got one on squarebill, so no complaints. Tell you what, if I can find some clean bank without the grass following my hookup, it's got to be a crankbait. Especially right now with this tide as it is, it's going to get lower and lower and we won't be able to throw this guy. Thank you, little buddy. Yeah, if I'm going to throw something, move. There we go, another one. Oh, I had another one. Dang it. Oh, dude, he's still on. He's swimming fast. Oh, what the heck? Dude, I got to get off this bank. There's some fish here. It's the weirdest thing. I lost him and then I hooked him. He swung, or I swung the hooks back into him by accident. Look at that healthy grass. That's probably a key ingredient for these fish to be in this zone. Now I'm kind of wishing I got here a little earlier. With the tide being higher, gonna run out of time. This tide's gonna get too low. We won't even be able to throw a crankbait in these areas. Well, so far at a glance, outgoing doesn't seem half bad. Oh, look at that. I mean, that was supposed to be like a 6-pounder, but that's what we love about bass. They're crazy enough to eat a bait bigger than it. Oh, there we go. That surprised me. These fish think they're stripers, but they're just bass. You guys are acting like stripers. Right? You know what I mean? Like, you can usually tell if it's striper after you set into it, and it takes off and your line kind of makes that weird peeling noise. But just a largemouth bass. Not gonna complain. Little dink bite. Definitely just had a little guy poke me. Makes sense though, downsized. I ran out of water in that other stretch. Tide, you can see, is low. And that bank beating crankbait deal just wasn't doable. So fishing off the bank now, underspin for a little fella. Hey, just remember guys, and I know this already, every January, February, even March as of the past couple of years, come out to the Delta, most times you wouldn't believe there's bass that even exist here. It is a skunk fest out here in the wintertime. So my point being is right now, catching anything, even these little dinks, you gotta cherish it, because there will be plenty of days if we come out in the winter where I'll be praying for a dink bite. Little guy. Lots of little guys right there. That's 3 bites. May have found the nursery back here. Little dinks busting down the way. Gotta make the run and get to them. Probably take me about 30 seconds. A little bigger. Thank you, sir. Still looking at that one spot. I saw some fish kind of boiling on bait. Probably little ones, but it's a good sign right now. These fish are grouping up, feeding on this low tide, or this tide right now. I don't even think it's actually at its lowest. Usually a good spot for them to congregate on a really low tide. Areas that kind of funnel that bait. Definitely some fish right here, but you know what? I'm gonna make my way down there and just see if it's money. Alright, it only took like 20 seconds. I have a feeling we're gonna catch a bunch of rats over here. Maybe a couple of good ones in the mix, you never know. Oh, a little better one. Oh, sorry, buddy. Oh. A little dirtier water. Thinking maybe they couldn't see that single underspin as good. Changed over to a mini A-rig. Check this bad boy out. It's like a finesse A-rig. Shout out Dark Horse Baits. I have a feeling this is going to be a killer in a lot of places this fall, winter. Bumped. Come on, man. You know, these fish are definitely schooling up on bait, so A-rig would seem reasonable. Let's go. Oh! All the same age back here. Come on, man. Yeah, there must be a pot. Yeah. There we go. Oh, there's some teenagers, maybe some adults in here. What's that striper squeal? But it's a largemouth. That's fun. Chunky. Man, there's gotta be so much bait in your belly. Exactly where we caught our first couple of fish down this way. We left this little spot and went to the other spot where I thought they could be loaded, but I guess the bigger ones are over here. Bigger ones and small ones. I gotta do something responsible right now. I can tell this line is a little thinner than what I have my underspin on. Let's change this real quick, because I only got one rig with me. I do not want to break it off. Dang it. Oh my god, I can see him busting. This A-rig. I think this rod has got... This feels like 17-pound line. Just want to go a little heavier with a rig. So I am going to be ripping this through some grass. Shoot, we might run into a big one, and I'd rather have 17 on than 15. Alright, let's see what that does. Alright, now I feel more prepared. Some good ones over here. Ooh, don't break the line. Don't break the line. Alright, the better ones are over on this side. They're just sitting in this grass right now. Munching on the bait. Oh, another good one. Yeah, okay one. Man, you wouldn't even think these fish are here. It's so shallow. Like, look at the graph. Like 1.5 foot of water right here. There's like a little ledge out there that drops down into like 5, but they seem to be kind of up here. guys are fun. Oh, I don't want the winter to come on the Delta. Acrobatic. Can you believe it? This is the first time I've ever used like a finesse A-rig. I know it's nothing new, but I don't know why it took me so long to start throwing one. Makes a lot of sense. Big one. Oh, actually, I think he might have just got hung in the grass. There's definitely a sweet spot out there. One specific cast, that general vicinity seems to hold some fish. Trying to stay off of it. It's like right there. It's super shallow right there too. Oh, yeah. Little area. Look at the belly shirts on these though. Quote nobody a lot nowadays, but I mean that is a belly shirt. I'm still not sure why they're just sitting in that one little area. Very strange. Good one. Good one. There's some decent ones in the mix. That's the key component. There we go. Good one. That feels good. Good, good. It's hard to tell on the rig. Oh yeah. Better one. It really is hard to tell because they hit it so hard, so you think that every one of them is a lot bigger than they actually are. I mean, it's solid, but you know, if you told me when that fish hit it was a 5-pounder, I would have easily believed you. I think the tide finally did switch though. Water is incoming now. So again, just trying to keep to the theme of this video, this experiment, fish through some of these same areas that I fished through up until this point and see what the bite's like. Been decent so far. I mean, they're not shy, they're not lockjawed, and they're still relatively shallow. I mean, that fish right there was right here in like 2 foot. Ooh, there's a big one. Actual big one. Thank you, sir. Come out of the grass just like all the other ones. Mr. Shoulders. Ooh. Delta water. Yuck. Just fishing this sparse grass, kind of on this little, I guess it's a grass line. Whoa. That's a big fish, whatever that is. That one was like right up on the bank too. One thing about the Delta too, he's like never can fish too shallow. These fish just do not mind being crazy shallow. Oh, that was a big one. Oh man, I saw him. Oh man, I wonder if that was the fish that just blew up in the shallows. It's like a 4 or 5 pounder. Big one. Could have been even bigger. Man. Oh, it's a big one. That's a bass too. Another one. Yeah. Oh man. Fun. Whew, doggy. That was fun. Some of that one come up and smoke her. Alright, time to order more of these guys. I don't know, our experiment today may be a little skewed based on area. So I think this area just has a lot of fish in it, so maybe it's just coincidence that we ran across them at this tide and they set up correctly. Be interesting to know, you know, if we came here first thing in the morning, like 7 a.m., first light, high tide. I mean, you can see the tide was probably about 4 foot higher than what it is right now. Would these fish be eaten like they are? It's always impossible to say. That's got to be a striper, right? It's pulling back on me. Stay on, please stay on. Are you on still? No. Oh no, that felt huge. He pulled back. Oh my gosh. That was a big one. Bass, I don't know. Striper, could have been. But we haven't really caught any striper except that one tiny one. Oh, shh. That is, holy smokes. That, I don't know. I don't even want to think about it. He bent my hook out. I have never had a fish bend my hook out. I've gotten stuck on wood or rock or whatever and pulled out and the hook's bent out, but I've never had a fish bend the hook out. Oh my gosh. The what ifs when you lose a fish, right? Oh man. It's gonna put a whole new jig head on. .3/16, yeah. 3/16, 3/0. Glad they label them. Honestly, don't even know what I could have done differently there. Like I kept pressure on the fish. See, that's the same spot that I just lost that big fish. There's bass sitting there. Oh well, if everything was perfect in bass fishing, you went out and smoked them every time, you caught every fish you hooked, it'd be boring. You wouldn't have that wonder, that chase, that desire. I always say you need moments like that to keep the passion alive. I need to say that to make myself feel better too. I got a bunch of bites earlier. Water's actually cleaned up in certain spots. Yeah, they're still there. Finally got a topwater fish, like a decent topwater fish. Oh, a little snack break. Jerky. Oh my. No! I was literally just about to retie too because I saw like a white spot in the line. Oh my gosh. Dang it. No. No. That might be the end of our fishing day, folks. Son of a gun. There was a big one that came out and smoked it. Missed it. I dropped the bait back down and it came out and got it again. And I saw that weak spot in the line. I swear I was just about to retie. I was waiting to get that back to the belt and then I was going to retie. Dang it. I don't have any more. Okay, Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is 3:30. Tide is still incoming. Yeah, another solid day out on the California Delta. Like I said in the beginning of this video, kind of did this trip with a focus on doing a little experimentation, seeing which tide was more favorable for the bite window. As we know on these tidal fisheries, especially the Delta, certain times of year the fish tend to relate better with a certain tide. And right now, kind of being on that cusp of, well shoot, felt like fall all morning, and right now kind of feels like summer. But that transitional period, if they be more related to that summer outgo or the cooler weather months, that I typically get a better bite when the water rises. So got out there kind of late, but again, intentionally, really just to follow that tide table, fish the last half of outgoing, fish the bottom of the tide, and then fish the first half of incoming. And it didn't take long to get bit. I mean, tide was still high enough where I could throw some stuff up onto the bank, up onto the riprap. Though it may feel like summer right now, with the days getting shorter, nights cooler, there's been a lot of this grass that has died off, which makes it favorable to throw some treble hook baits around the grass, such as a crankbait. That's what we started with. Really a staple bait all year long so far for the Delta, and it hasn't slowed down. First bite of the day was actually a pretty decent one on the old square bowl. I think I caught a few more small ones throwing that around. Decided to whip around the glide bait, caught a little micro on the glide. Right off the get, bite seemed pretty good. As that tide continued to drop, those baits, those treble hook baits, the crankbait, glide bait, just very tough to throw up into the shallows with that water coming down and that grass rising up. So worked my way down a little further. Tide was getting pretty dang low. I mean, you guys saw from the tide chart, we had a really low tide today, a big tide swing. We really found a couple of areas that seemed to hold a lot more fish, a lot more bait. I actually fished these areas before. They're deeper, so you'd imagine on a lower tide, some of the fish that are up shallow that don't have any more water above their head have to suck into some of these deeper holes. The deeper holes weren't the ones producing, but the grass adjacent to them, up in like 2-3 foot of water, held fish. Caught a few small ones just to get started. Kind of gave us the sign that they were there, that they were chasing. I think we're catching them on an underspin, but then decided to switch over to the mini, I guess the finesse A-rig, started slinging that around, and almost immediately I started getting a better quality fish, and they were just biting it better too. I think that bigger profile, a little bit of stain on the water, some wind every so often, and with these fish really setting up in the grass, like not buried in the grass, they were probably setting up right on the edges of the grass, and when they'd see that A-rig go by it, they'd come out and smoke it. I mean, I had a bunch of them follow it. When I stood up a few times, I saw some literally right next to the boat come out of the grass and eat the A-rig, and ended up catching some solid fish on that. Really found a couple of productive areas, some key little 20 by 30 zones that they were sitting in, picking up some random fish in other areas. Yeah, just a lot of fun. That right there, that bite just never really stopped. And what's interesting was this bite really happened on the dead low slack tide, that bottomed out period where there's really no water coming in or out. It's really, other than summertime, I think one of the hardest and worst tides to fish, but I guess maybe right place, right time. But yeah, just fished around that area probably for a good 2.5-3 hours, consistently catching fish. Did have one smoke the A-rig, and granted, all these fish when they hit the A-rig, the 2.5-3 pounders, they feel pretty good, but you know, after a couple of winds, you get them in. Well, this one hit the A-rig, set back, pulled me back. I pulled back again, it pulled me back again, got me buried in the grass, and she popped off. I bent my hook out, which is pretty dang hard to do on a jig hook. Whether it was a bass or not, or maybe a big striper, I don't know, but other than that one, like I think we caught like a 5-inch striper, I didn't get a striper all day. So the odds of that one being a striper compared to the, I don't even know how many we caught, 25-30 bass, I want to say no. I want to say that that was probably a green one, a bass. The other unfortunate moment of the day, probably even the most unfortunate moment of the day, was fishing it, standing up. I saw a pretty good one come out right from the grass like they'd been doing. It actually missed the A-rig right at the boat. I dropped the A-rig back down. It came back and ate it, set the hook. I think it was just a weird mechanics thing. I snapped the line kind of deal, and obviously there was a weak point in my line. I set, no fish, but the A-rig came out of the water and went about 30 yards behind my shoulder, and that being our only A-rig, that whole deal unfortunately was done. Note to self, bring more A-rigs next time just in case. Anyways, I don't know, made do with it. Figured we could still pick off some more fish, and we did. I think we caught a couple more on the spinnerbait. Definitely a downgrade in size and definitely a downgrade in frequency of bite. I ended up leaving that area. The tide finally switched. It was starting to come in, so the water was rising with a pretty consistent bite all the way up until this point. I was very curious to see if we'd continue on with a good bite or if it maybe died off, and I don't know, it's hard to say. We didn't have the A-rig, which is definitely the winning bait of today, and we weren't fishing the areas that were clearly loaded with fish. Yeah, so just kind of worked down the bank, down the channel. Still picked up a few fish here and there on the spinnerbait. They seem to still be setting up. I don't know, I guess all in all, my experiment really didn't work other than finding a couple of areas on a dead low slack tide that had fish and wanted that A-rig. That's why the Delta's so tricky. You can just never really predict these fish, know where they'll be, what they'll be doing at certain tides, certain times of year, certain times times a day. As I always say, your best bet is just to go out there with your best guess, mix and match until you figure something out, get a hint, a piece of the puzzle, build upon that, and hopefully at some point during the day it just kind of clicks, or maybe you find an area that has a good population of fish and you can go to town on them. But guys, that is going to do it for today's day out on the California Delta. It's a beautiful place to fish. Love it out here. Shallow power fishing. Any cast could be a giant, so you really can't ask for much more. But as always, guys, I thank you for watching, for coming along, and I will catch you guys in the next one.